Hey, this is Rick for Bite Size Pickleball, and today I'm going to discuss the zone. For anyone that doesn't know exactly what the zone is, the zone can also be described as peak performance, or basically when you're performing at the height of your game. When you are at the height of your game, when you have mastery over your game, it's like time is standing still, and everything you work so hard for comes together in a magical display of your talents. It's a mysterious place that can't really be intellectualized. It can only be experienced, and even then, by a select few. One of those few is former Major League Baseball pitcher Eric Gagne. For those of you that don't remember Gagne, he was a relief pitcher for the Dodgers in the early 2000s when he set a Major League record of 84 saves in a row. Let that sink in. He went out to the mound. Every single game he was called upon, that would be 84 times in a row and save the game for his team. Talk about being able to deal with the pressure. How do you deal with pressure on the pickleball court? Could you use some help in that area? If so, it starts with learning how to simplify your process. You do that by first putting in the hours on the practice court, and next by getting out of your own way. And by that, I mean leaving your mind in the dugout when you take the mound. So I'm sitting there with Gagne in the Dodgers dugout while his team was warming up for a game, and I asked him the question I ask every athlete I used to interview, and that's about the zone. As an athlete myself, it was always what interested me the most, because even if zone talk wasn't going to work for whatever publication I was writing for, maybe, just maybe, it could work for me. Yup, entirely selfish reasons. So I asked Gagne how he was able to string together all these saves in a row. He looks at me very matter-of-factly and he says, I just try to focus on hitting the catcher's mitt. That would be an example of simplifying the process, right? Just focus on hitting the catcher's mitt. Maybe in pickleball, that can be translated into what? Just focus on hitting the ball. Number one, Gagne had gotten to the place in his career where the hundreds of hours of practice and the muscle memory he developed allowed him total trust in his arm and his game and the ability to just focus on the catcher's mitt. Number two, along with the mastery over his practice, he had to have a highly developed mental game to block out all the junk, the inside noise and the outside noise. Case in point, in the middle of our interview, a few of his teammates started toward us in the dugout, riding Gagne because, well, he was getting a lot more attention than they were that season. So these guys are trying to talk smack, and Gagne stops our interview. He turns to me and he says, wait until those fuckers leave. Those effers saw Gagne wasn't going to engage with them with a negative chatter, and that diffused their hijinks. And they went about their way, and we carried on our interview. You want to access the zone, you have to eliminate distractions. The outside ones, like Gagne did above, and your own inside ones. How many times has the voice in your head questioned or doubting your process in the middle of a game? Like Gagne, you need to learn not to take the bait of the noise, whether it comes from outside or inside. And that circles us back to episode 1 and 2 of this podcast on the inner critic. In order to gain access to the zone, you need to be free from your inner critic. And in order to do that, you need to possess a certain level of mindfulness. That, along with a combination of practice, is the simple recipe you need for greatness. And then the signpost up ahead, the zone. Practice plus mindfulness equals greatness, and maybe the zone.
The signpost.
And I would say that goes for pickleball and anything worthwhile in life. Practice, mindfulness, greatness. Tap your potential and learn to get the heck out of your own way. One of the really interesting things to me about the zone is you can't get to the zone if you're trying to get to the zone. You can't willfully force your way into the zone. It's too mysterious for that. Again, it's not an intellectual process. Peak performance, mastery is about tapping into something far deeper than the self. It's really about transcending the self and forming what I like to call a mystical connection with the source. When you're in that special place, you'll be able to respond from the center of the hurricane rather than react from the chaos of the storm. Respond from the center of the hurricane rather than react from the chaos from the storm. That's a quote from famous performance coach George Mumford. Mumford is the one that helped Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Phil Jackson win all those championship rings. Jackson brought him on in Chicago, and it was Mumford's mindfulness principles that helped the Bulls crystallize into one of the greatest basketball teams of all time. Mumford then followed Jackson to LA, and he bestowed those gifts on Shaq, Kobe, and the Lakers, and they became another one of the greatest teams ever. If you're interested in exploring the topic further, I highly recommend George Mumford's book, The Mindful Athlete. Write it down, George Mumford, The Mindful Athlete. We'll wait. If you were lucky enough to watch all those championship seasons, I was fortunate enough to be in attendance for many of those Laker games, you witnessed a lot of instances of the zone, not only individually, but more importantly, collectively as a team. That was perhaps the most important thing Mumford turned all those great players onto, transcending their own selves and often large egos for a greater purpose. You can have that kind of connection with your pickleball teammate. That's the zone in a nutshell. Transcending our own egos for a greater purpose. That greater purpose is experiencing an awe we don't often experience. An awe that makes us feel amazing to be alive and connected to something well beyond our rational, fear-based minds. The zone, the magical zone. And let me just say this, you could have the best pickleball skills in the world, but if you don't have the mindfulness practice to go along with it, you have zero chance at sustaining greatness in your game, and that includes the ability to tap the zone. You might get lucky and hit it once or twice, but if you don't possess the mind game, it's my belief you'll always be coming at your game from a place of struggle. I want you to know something. You do have it in you to go beyond the struggle. It's never going to happen overnight, but if you want to get to a more graceful place in your game, maybe even your life, it can happen. Struggle is a choice you've made. You also have another choice. Learn how to flow. That's the zone, and it requires being mindful. Okay, so what's this mindfulness all about? I'm going to get into that in our next podcast. And for you skeptics, don't worry. I'm not going to tell you have to put on an orange robe and head to a mountaintop and beat a drum, Ringo. We are going to start way simpler than that, and that's with your breath. In the meantime, when you're out playing this week, see how many times you can catch yourself holding your breath. My guess is a lot. Then look around you at the other players and see how many of them are holding their breath. The majority of them will be holding their breath. Once you've completed our homework assignment, come back next week and I'll teach you a really simple breathing technique that will instantly change your game. And I'll talk a little bit more about mindfulness and what it means to me and how it's enriched my life and my pickleball game, without the need to shave my head and wear an orange robe, though I am not judging those people. Thanks for tuning in. If you have the time, I would love it if you could rate and review the podcast. Over and out. Let's all breathe now.